episode of Tales of Olympus, the podcast where we dive into the wildest, most dramatic, and sometimes just downright unbelievable stories from Greek mythology. I'm Ariel, your host, your demigod detective, and your labyrinth explorer, wink, here to bring you another legendary tale. And good news, my throat is all better now, and there's no bad news. Don't you worry about that part. And excuse me, sorry. We also have another great news. We have a fandom page. I'll link it below in the description because it's still not searchable by Google. I mean, it is, but just not that easy to search. So I'll send you the link in the description. So today we're heading into one of the darkest stories. Well, not one of the darkest, all of them are dark, almost. But anyways, today we're gonna go into the story, the one with the monster, the maze, the prince, and a thread. Do you get it? Like Theseus? Well, this is Theseus and the Minotaur. And it starts not with a hero, but with a curse. Well, let's go to the first part then. Let this story begin. It all goes back to the death of a prince named Androgeus, spelled Androgeus, the son of King Minos of Crete. Androgeus was Androgeus or Androgeus, it depends on how you pronounce it. So anyways, Androgeus was a star athlete. Think golden boy, undefeated champion. Everyone loved him, but when he went to Athens and started winning every single competition, the king of Athens got jealous. Some say the king secretly arranged for Androgeus to be killed. Others say he was sent to fight a dangerous bull and never come back. Either way, King Minos was furious. Crete was a powerful island kingdom. And when Minos declared war on Athens for a reason, Athens lost very badly. So King Minos offered a deal, and that was that every 9 years, Athens must send 14 children to Crete as a tribute, to be thrown into the labyrinth, to feed the beast. Well, yeah, not exactly what I'd call a fair trade, but we're talking in ancient Greece here. Now, Daedalus, there was this dude named Daedalus. He was this genius inventor like the Da Vinci of Greek mythology. And King Minos asked him to build a prison for something he couldn't keep in a cage. The Minotaur. Now, how did that thing even exist? We'll get into that in another episode because the whole origin story is chaotic already. Maybe we'll add it as a bonus episode, maybe midweek. But today we don't have time for that because this story is very, 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 very long. But for now, all you need to know is that the Minotaur was a bull man with the body of a human and the head of a bull. And the labyrinth was a maze with no exit that kept shifting and turning every day. So now it twisted and turned and circled back on itself. It was dark, confusing, and even the creator couldn't escape it. Once you were in, you were never getting out. And so every 9 years, the people of Athens wept. They drew names. They chose children. And they watched him sail away towards death. Until one year something happened. And this is how Theseus came to be in the story. Now, the king of Athens had fell in love with another woman before everything of this. Now, the other woman was named... Okay, I'll wait a few seconds. Can you guess who Theseus' mother's name was? No one? Okay. Well, his mother was Aethra. Theseus was born in Trojan. and for most of his life he didn't even know who his father was. Until one day, Ariel led him to a giant rock. Under that rock was a sword and a pair of sandals. And she told him that if he was strong enough to lift the stone, he would be ready to claim his birthright. And for years, Theseus worked. He trained. And one day, he finally lifted the stone. Underneath were the sandals and sword of his father, King Aegeus of... No, it's not Aegeus, it's Aegeus of Athens. And let's just say, the Theseus's birth wasn't exactly clear, because some say that Aethra fell in love with Poseidon as well as Aegeus. So Theseus was sort of like son of Poseidon and a son of King of Athens. So anyways, Theseus was the last prince of the very city that sent children to their deaths. And when he arrived in Athens and saw what his people were going through, when he saw his father grieving, when he learned the truth of the Labyrinth and the Minotaur, well, Theseus and Aegeus had a happy reunion, and then Theseus stood tall and said, "I will go. I will end this curse." So far, pretty exciting, right? So now let's continue to the next part. Oh, and I forgot to mention a few things. Actually, it's just one thing. My song, The Good in Me, have time synced lyrics. Go check it out on Apple Music and Spotify or whatever you get your music from. Okay. Now, as we were saying, Theseus stood up and said that he wanted to do that, so let's just go. But before Theseus really came to Athens, he could have just, took a ship right to Athens. Like, that was so easy, yay. Okay, excuse me for a moment. Theseus could have taken the easy road, right? But he chose instead to go by land, and he went through many great adventures. Scary. We'll talk about that maybe in next week's episode or in the future. So anyways, time skip back to Athens. Now, as you'd expect, Aegeus was very sad that Theseus had just met him and then would be sent to his death. Right, like any father would think that. So, excuse me, Theseus and Aegeus made a promise. If Theseus would came back victorious, they would rise the white sails. If not, like it meant that Theseus was dead, they would raise back black sails. And so, the currently black-sailed ship pulled away from Athens. And on the deck stood Theseus, the prince who had just promised his father he'd return, not as a corpse from the labyrinth, but as a victor. 13 other children stood with him, scared, silent, and staring at the waves. No one spoke, not even Theseus, because once you're on that ship, there's no turning back. Now, the next stop is Crete, the kingdom of King Minos, the prison of the Minotaur, and the the palace of Ariadne. The princess who would just change about everything. The ship arrived in the grand harbor of Knossos. It was the capital of Crete. The sun was hot, the palace glittered gold, and the guards wore masks shaped like bulls. The prisoners were marched up the stairs, not to be thrown into the maze just yet, but to be paraded like trophies before King Minos and Queen Pasiphae. Let's just say King Minos loved showing off his power. He pointed at the Athenian children and said to his court, This is what you happen when you cross Crete. Theseus, however, said nothing. He stared back, and standing behind the throne, hidden in the waves, someone else was staring too. Ariadne, the king's daughter. Ariadne was no ordinary princess. She was clever, restless, and tired of the same royal rituals. But when she saw the boy from Athens, tall, calm, and proud, something in her shifted. Who was he? And why didn't he look afraid? That night, as the prisoners were locked in the cells, Ariadne crept through the halls and met him in secret. Who are you? She whispered. I am Theseus, son of Aegeus, and I have come to kill the Minotaur. Ariadne's eyes widened, because no one ever dared say that aloud. Ariadne knew something that others didn't. She had seen the labyrinth. She had peeked at the twisting blueprints Daedalus left behind. She knew the truth. Even if you killed the Minotaur, you'd never get out alive. So she made a choice. Not a safe one, not a loyal one, but a brave one. She told Theseus, if you promise to take me with you, to free me from this cursed island, I will help you survive. And that's how the deal became, and that's when she gave him the thread. A ball of golden thread enchanted by Daedalus himself. She explained, tie this to the entrance of the labyrinth, unroll it as you walk, and once the beast is dead, follow the thread back out. That night, a promise was sealed. A thread was hidden beneath Theseus's tunic, and a plan became to form. The next morning, the prisoners were marched toward the labyrinth. The wind howled, the sky darkened, and the stone mouth of the maze opened like a monster itself. Theseus looked at Ariadne one last time. She nodded. He took a breath, and he stepped inside. The gate slammed shut behind him, and for a moment there was only darkness. Theseus stood at the mouth of the labyrinth. The walls around him were ancient, damp, and alive with echoes. The floor beneath his feet was stone, worn smooth by the footsteps of those who never returned. But he wasn't afraid. Not yet. Because tied around his wrist was Ariadne's thread, glowing faintly golden in the shadows. And somewhere in this twisting nightmare, the Minotaur was waiting. The labyrinth was no ordinary maze. It shifted. It whispered. It felt alive. Every turn looked exactly like the last. The walls were too tall to climb, and the air grew thicker with each step. Theseus carefully unwound the golden thread behind him, tying it to the wall step by step, like Ariadne had instructed. At first there was only silence, and then the silence began to breathe. A low growl, a snort, a thud, then two, then three. It was coming. Theseus spun toward the sound, sword raised. The flickering torch in his hand revealed a shadow, massive, horned, and steaming in cold darkness. And then from the shadows it emerged. The Minotaur. Its body was like a man, strong, scarred, and brutal. But its head was the head of a bull, with curling horns and burning red eyes. It let out a roar that shook the walls, the sound of rage, of hunger. of pain, because the Minotaur wasn't just a monster. It had been cursed into existence, born from a secret the gods would rather forget. But right now, Theseus couldn't care. He had a job to do. They fought day and night. Theseus was fast, but the Minotaur was furious. He had to end it, now. And then Theseus spotted a jagged piece of stone sticking out of the wall. An idea flashed through his mind. As the Minotaur charged again, Theseus sprinted toward the stone, leapt into the air and kicked off the wall, and plunged his sword straight into the creature's chest. Well, not exactly the chest. He climbed onto the Minotaur's back and snapped off the Minotaur's horns, and plunged the horn into his chest, right into the heart. The beast froze. It let out one final breath, a sound like thunder breaking, and collapsed, dead. The Minotaur was no more. He turned, grabbed the golden thread, and began to follow it back, step by step, winding through the madness toward the light. When the guards opened the labyrinth the next morning, expecting to find bones, they found Theseus, alive, holding the horns of the fallen Minotaur. The people gasped. The palace froze. And Ariadne? She smiled. The curse was broken. But this isn't the end. Because next comes betrayal, a storm, and a forgotten promise. The Minotaur was dead. The labyrinth had been conquered. And Theseus had kept his promise. He saved the 14 children, and he had become a hero in his own right. But myths don't always end in cheers. Sometimes, or most of the time, they end in heartbreak. Because this final part is the hardest one to tell. As the black-sailed ship left Crete, Ariadne stood at the bow, watching the island disappear behind her. She had done something unthinkable. She had betrayed her own father. She helped the Athenians escape. She had helped kill the Minotaur, her own half-brother. I said next time we'll talk about it. And all for one reason, love. Theseus had promised her everything. He said that when they reached Athens, she would be his queen, and she believed him. But one night, as the ship docked on a quiet island named Naxos for a break, Theseus said they needed to rest, right? So the crew settled in, and Ariadne fell asleep on the beach, curled beneath a tree, her golden hair glowing in the moonlight. And when she woke up, the ship was gone. Theseus had left her. No goodbye, no reason, just gone. Some versions of the story say that Theseus had just been too happy with his victory and didn't notice Ariadne. Or some say that he did it on purpose. But, well, it did end well for Ariadne, for one point. The god Dionysus, the god of wine, found her and made her his queen instead. It was pretty great for Ariadne. But why did Theseus leave? Well, just some say that Theseus changed his mind, and some say the gods, well, especially Dionysus, forced him to leave, and others say that he just forgot. Meanwhile, the ship sailed back toward Athens. The sea was quiet, the sky was clear, but Theseus forgot something. Either way, he never changed the sails. Maybe he was too happy. Maybe he was too heartbroken. But remember his promise to his father? If I survive, I'll raise the wild sails. And if I die, the sails will be black. As the ship appeared on the horizon, King Aegeus stood on a cliff, watching. He saw the black sails, and in that moment he believed his son was dead. So he did something tragic. He threw himself from the cliff into the sea. And that sea was named after him, the Aegean Sea. To this day, every wave that crashes on its shore carries the weight of that broken promise. So what do we make of Theseus? A hero? A heartbreaker? A prince who saved a city but destroyed the ones who trusted him most? In the end, well, he did defeat the Minotaur. He did save the children, but every victory comes at a price. That's it for this epic, heart-wrenching adventure on Tales of Olympus. I'm your host, Ariel, and I'll see you next time for more legendary stories filled with drama, destiny, and maybe a little divine revenge. Don't forget to follow, rate, and tell your friends or demigod parents about the podcast. Until then, hold on to your thread and never break a promise. My name is Ariel, I'm 10 years old, and I will see you next episode. Bye!